He looked like the kind of man who wouldn't hurt a fly. Soft features, a gentle smile, and eyes that made people feel safe. If you passed him on the street, you wouldn't look twice. If he asked for help, you'd probably offer it. And if he told you he cared, you might even believe him. That was the deadly power of Lesley Eugene Warren, the serial killer the world would one day call the Babyface Killer. 4 women trusted him. 4 women opened their hearts, their homes, and their lives to him. Not because he threatened them, but because he appeared so harmless. Warren didn't need to force his way into anyone's life. He slipped in quietly, like a shadow wearing a smile. And once he stepped inside, his victims never saw the danger until it was too late. This video takes you inside the mind of a man who used charm as his weapon and trust as his trap. A man who mastered manipulation so perfectly that even investigators struggled to believe someone with such a gentle appearance could commit such brutal crimes. Behind his baby face was a predator with no remorse, no conscience, and no hesitation. His victims didn't fall because they were weak. They fell because he was incredibly good at pretending to be something he wasn't. Today we uncover how one innocent-looking man became one of the most chilling killers in America, and why 4 women never saw the monster hiding behind his smile. Lesley Eugene Warren's story begins long before he earned the chilling title of the Babyface Killer. Growing up, he didn't stand out as dangerous or violent. If anything, he blended into the background, quiet, polite, and forgettable, in the kind of way that made people assume he was harmless. But beneath that carefully maintained, calm exterior, something darker was growing. People who knew him as a child later recalled that he had a strange way of looking at others, as if studying them, calculating them. He rarely showed real emotion, only acting out what he thought people expected to see. By the time Warren reached his teenage years, he discovered the one advantage he had over most people: his appearance. Women trusted him easily because he looked innocent. Adults dismissed his anger as normal teenage frustration. And whenever he manipulated others, he did it with such softness that no one suspected a thing. He learned quickly that charm could open doors more effectively than force, and that lies wrapped in sweetness were harder to detect. As an adult, Warren drifted from place to place, using temporary jobs and short-term relationships to stay under the radar. Those who encountered him described him as gentle, polite, and someone who didn't look capable of hurting anyone. That image was his greatest disguise. Beneath it, he was studying people, searching for vulnerabilities, and identifying women who would trust him without question. His first known victim fell into his trap slowly. She thought she had found a man who understood her, who listened, who cared. Warren played the role perfectly, soft-spoken, affectionate, and protective in ways that felt comforting at first. But as the relationship deepened, his darker traits began to appear. He became controlling, possessive, and unpredictably angry. Still, she stayed, believing his apologies and his gentle face more than her own instincts. Warren knew exactly what he was doing. He built trust, brick by brick, fully aware that once he gained control over her emotions, she would instinctively excuse his behavior. When the situation escalated and he committed his first murder, it wasn't sudden or impulsive. It was the result of months of manipulation, emotional control, and calculated planning. That first kill changed everything. It awakened a thrill, an intoxicating sense of dominance that Warren had never felt before. And from that moment on, the line between charming young man and cold-blooded predator vanished forever. The second woman who crossed paths with Lesley Eugene Warren saw him as a gentle soul who simply needed stability and affection. She wasn't naive, she was kind. And Warren knew exactly how to play into that kindness. He approached her with soft vulnerability, telling stories about feeling misunderstood, abandoned, and mistreated. To her, he seemed like a broken man trying to rebuild his life. To him, she was the perfect target. empathetic, trusting, and eager to help someone who appeared fragile. Warren's manipulation was so subtle that she never realized she was being controlled. He didn't yell at first. He didn't intimidate her. Instead, he made himself look dependent on her support. He would say things like, "You're the only one who understands me," or, "I don't know what I'd do without you." These phrases weren't expressions of love. They were psychological hooks. Hooks designed to make her feel responsible for his emotional well-being. Once he secured that emotional grip, Warren's true personality began to reveal itself. His jealousy grew stronger. His questions became more invasive. He needed to know where she was, who she spoke to, why she came home late. He masked his control as concern, making her feel guilty for even minor things. Friends noticed her slowly withdrawing from social life. She stopped sharing personal problems, stopped going out, stopped speaking openly about her worries. Warren had isolated her without ever raising his voice. But isolation wasn't enough for him. His need for dominance escalated. Whenever she disagreed or challenged him, Warren quietly shifted into a different person. His eyes cold, his words sharp, his tone threatening. These moments were brief, but alarming. She sensed the danger but felt trapped, unable to leave the man she thought she was helping heal. One night, an argument turned into a violent confrontation. For the first time, the mask completely fell off, revealing the monster behind the gentle face. Warren acted with frightening precision, driven not by panic but by a chilling sense of control. The woman who once believed she could save him became his next victim. After the murder, Warren didn't break down. He didn't hesitate. He cleaned up, disposed of evidence, and disappeared like smoke, leaving behind no clues, no footprints, and no sign of remorse. With his second kill, Warren realized something terrifying. He could get away with murder. Again. And now, he knew exactly how to choose his next victim. The third woman in Lesley Eugene Warren's destructive path was very different from his earlier victims. She was confident, independent, and far more cautious around strangers. Warren quickly realized that his usual charm wouldn't be enough to win her trust, so he shifted his entire strategy. Instead of being the confident, caring partner, he presented himself as vulnerable, someone who had been hurt, misunderstood, and abandoned by people all his life. He played the role of a lonely man searching for emotional safety, and she, being compassionate, slowly allowed him into her world. He studied her carefully. He learned what made her feel connected, what made her feel protective, and what made her feel responsible. Instead of overwhelming her with attention, he acted hesitant, even shy, making her feel like she was the one earning his trust. This reversal of roles gave Warren an advantage he had never used before. It allowed him to avoid suspicion while gradually tightening his emotional grip around her. But as the relationship progressed, subtle warning signs surfaced. Warren began showing sudden flashes of anger, small, controlled, but very real. He criticized her friends, manipulated conversations, and made her feel guilty for spending time away from him. When she tried to set boundaries, he twisted her words, making her feel like she was the one damaging the relationship. Bit by bit, he pulled her away from her support system. Eventually, she recognized something was deeply wrong and tried to distance herself. To Warren, rejection wasn't just painful, it was intolerable. Losing control threatened the very power he craved. This triggered a shift in him, transforming his manipulative behavior into something far more dangerous. When she vanished, it immediately raised alarms. Her friends knew she would never disappear voluntarily. Their quick response forced investigators to take the case seriously. As police retraced her steps, Warren's name surfaced repeatedly. He had left clues, small but significant, suggesting he had been stalking her in the days leading up to her disappearance. Although Warren escaped before police could reach him, investigators discovered his pattern: emotional manipulation, sudden rage, and a calculated approach to isolating victims. He wasn't acting impulsively anymore. With each crime, he was becoming more strategic, more careful, and harder to track. Her case became a turning point. For the first time, law enforcement realized they weren't dealing with a troubled man. They were dealing with a serial predator who had learned how to hunt without being seen. The fourth woman who encountered Lesley Eugene Warren would unknowingly become the key figure who pushed the entire investigation forward. Unlike his earlier victims, she was alert, observant, and trusted her instincts. Warren sensed this immediately. She wasn't someone he could charm instantly, and that made her irresistible to him. For predators like Warren, control wasn't just a desire, it was a challenge. And she became the one challenge he refused to walk away from. He studied her quietly from the beginning. Unlike before, he didn't rush. He approached her slowly, planting himself in her routine, a casual greeting here, a friendly gesture there. He shaped himself to appear safe, familiar, unthreatening. But she remained cautious. She noticed small inconsistencies in his stories, subtle changes in his tone, and the way he always seemed to appear wherever she was. Her intuition picked up what her mind wasn't ready to admit. Something was wrong. Still, Warren was persistent. He began creating situations that forced interaction, offers to help with small tasks, accidental run-ins, emotional confessions meant to gain sympathy. But she never allowed him fully into her life. This resistance frustrated Warren. His charm, once his strongest weapon, was failing. And when charm fails for a predator, obsession begins. Her friends later recalled that she started expressing discomfort. She felt watched, followed. She even mentioned that Warren's smiling face didn't match the darkness she sensed beneath it. She tried distancing herself, avoiding him, taking different routes home. But Warren adapted. He waited. He watched. He studied her movements until he found the opening he needed. One night, she returned home later than usual. That was the window Warren had been preparing for. Under the cover of silence, he followed her. Witnesses reported seeing him in the area earlier that day, hovering suspiciously close to her apartment building. When she didn't show up to work the next morning, her family immediately contacted authorities. She wasn't someone who vanished without warning. This disappearance changed everything. Investigators found patterns connecting her case to previous unsolved crimes involving women Warren had interacted with. Suddenly, his name wasn't just a coincidence. It was a repeating signal. They traced his movements, questioned neighbors, and uncovered chilling evidence that finally put Warren under serious scrutiny. For the first time, the mask of the Babyface Killer began to crack, and Warren realized the net was closing in. As investigators dug deeper into the fourth woman's disappearance, the facade that had protected Lesley Eugene Warren for years finally began to collapse. What started as a routine missing person report quickly escalated into a multi-state investigation. Detectives pieced together phone records, witness statements, and past complaints, all pointing toward one man who had slipped through the system again and again. Warren's baby-faced innocence was no longer charming. It was suspicious. It was a mask. And now it was cracking. For the first time, police saw a clear timeline. Women Warren had dated. Women who had suddenly withdrawn from friends. Women who had vanished after moments of conflict with him. Survivors came forward. Women who had escaped his manipulation and emotional control. Their stories matched with disturbing precision. The same soft-spoken charm, the same possessiveness, the same sudden eruptions of cold, calculated anger. Warren had been a predator long before he became a murderer. When detectives finally tracked him down, Warren tried the same tactics that had worked countless times before. He appeared confused, emotional, even frightened. He insisted he was misunderstood, claimed he was being targeted, and tried to rely on the innocence of his appearance. But investigators were no longer basing decisions on emotion. They had hard evidence tying him to multiple crimes. As the case grew stronger, Warren became cornered. His attempts to flee failed. His lies began contradicting each other, and witnesses from different states independently identified him as the last person seen with the victims. It became clear that Warren had used his boyish face and gentle demeanor as tools that helped him gain trust, avoid suspicion, and walk away from scenes of horror. In court, the contrast between his appearance and his actions stunned everyone. Families of the victims faced a man who looked harmless, almost shy, yet had committed acts of unimaginable cruelty. When the verdict was announced, multiple life sentences, Warren sat expressionless, still wearing the same soft face that once fooled so many. But the world was no longer fooled. The story of Lesley Eugene Warren, the Babyface Killer, stands as a haunting reminder that evil does not,